Entrepreneur's Library, episode 34.
Welcome to the Entrepreneur's Library, the only book-centric podcast that reviews all the top-selling business books and shares authors' perspective firsthand. This is your resource to finding the next great book that will enable you to grow personally and professionally. Welcome your host, Wade Danielson.
Thank you for joining us on the EL. Today we have Don Green representing the Napoleon Hill Foundation. And Napoleon was the author of Think and Grow Rich. I'm really excited about this episode because Think and Grow Rich has been, since I read it, my all-time favorite book. And since we can't have Napoleon himself on, we grabbed the next best thing, which is someone from the foundation to really take us through the book. This is going to be a little bit, it's going to be longer of an interview because I think that 20 minutes would be doing this book injustice. So we're really going to take our time on going through Napoleon's creation from so long ago. And so I hope you enjoy. Welcome, Don, and thank you for joining us on the Entrepreneur's Library.
You're very welcome, Wade. My pleasure.
Will you take just a moment to introduce yourself and tell us just a little bit about you personally?
Yes, Wade. My background is banking and finance. I worked 38 years in banking finance. I was a bank president for 20 years. And while I was president of the bank, I contacted Napoleon Hill Foundation, and they invited me to come up and have dinner with them. The trustees did some work I'd done regarding Napoleon Hill, and I can remember Mr. Stone invited me to be a board member, and I was a board member when I was actually in banking. And then close to the year 2000, the previous executive director, Mike was beyond being able to travel and so forth, and only keep pace. And Mike said was, we found one to take over in our own ranks because I guess I knew the material pretty well, and we had a chance to sell the bank I was at, and I had a year's contract after we sold to work. Could have kept on working, but the timing was just absolutely great. I told him I would like to move the foundation out of Illinois to Wise. That's where he's from. I didn't want to live in Illinois. I visited enough, and we did. And the University of Virginia and Wise made a place for me. I didn't have to go out and build a building. They gave us a series of offices overlooking a little lake and beautiful scenery, and it's worked out just wonderful.
Excellent. Well, thank you for sharing that. Now let's jump right into this timeless classic, Think and Grow Rich, which was first made available for purchase March of 1937. Don, this will be the earliest book that we've actually ever covered, but I'm really excited because the principles within it are that. They're timeless. This isn't a book on technology that will be irrelevant in 5 years. This is a book that people can read in 2037, 100 years later, and still get a ton of value out of. So we're going to move fairly quickly through the questions. And I know that you're going to be answering for, in some of these kind of answering for Mr. Hill, but what was the inspiration behind Think and Grow Rich?
Well, Hill started out as a cub reporter when he was in his youth, and he had the dream of writing to cover expenses. He and a brother were in college. They were in law school at Georgetown University, and he had the big idea that he could make enough money writing. And he got a job with Bob Taylor's magazine. Bob Taylor was a U.S. Senator and been governor of Tennessee. So he employed him, and basically there were success stories to go out and interview people and or newsworthy items. I know he covered such things as Mobile, Alabama, when it was growing real fast, and we have articles where he covered the Wright brothers' flight. A lot of historical stuff. And but when he interviewed Carnegie challenged him to go interview these people and find out why some people were successful. And that's basically what he spent the best portion of his life at, because you couldn't answer it with saying, well, people successful that gets a college education. Well, that improves their odds of being successful, but that's not the final reason. These other things besides just education from a major college or major university. And that's what he saw by asking questions. And he's the first one to ever do this. Now, there were people that he read, like Orson Swett Martin and so forth, that wrote on subjects. He read everything. And they wrote articles, but it was from a backroom perspective. Hill went and sought them out. And, he went to Detroit and interviewed Henry Ford. He interviewed Edison in his laboratories and so forth. In other words, he did actual on the spot and didn't just write about it. He answered the questions that he wanted to ask. And of course, I'm sure he formulated a better question and answer thing as he went along. But that's what he did.
Excellent. Thank you for taking us through that story. What do you think makes Think and Grow Rich different from other books regarding the same topic?
Well, I mean, he was the first. And I mean, I got all kinds of friends without mentioning their names. There's a lot of good books out there. And I read a lot. I probably read an average of 3 books a week. But practically any of them you look at, they their basis is Napoleon Hill. And I mean, you would not believe the people that try to print books, Think and Grow Rich, are trademark and then put / something else on it because they know that's what people recognize. And I mean, like, I read the book The Secret, Law of Attraction. Hill wrote about the law of attraction in his magazine in March 1919. He wrote an article about the law of attraction. So while the folks that did the law of attraction got on Oprah, and it's a good book, and they sold all that. It's not anything new. They're all of them a spin-off on something or another that Hill did.
I've noticed that same thing as I'm reading other books. I kind of see them go through a concept. I'm like, that's the first place I read it, myself was Think and Grow Rich. So that's kind of always my reference point. I read that, or this makes sense because I read it in Think and Grow Rich. So that's kind of.
Yep, I see all kinds of quotes today. That people sometimes heck, I got one today. Somebody wanting to use a quote in some management company. And we normally let them do it if they're a legitimate, if they're not doing a product or something other that would embarrass the foundation. But then a lot of people we see, I see stuff contributed by somebody other and they don't mention his name or contribute to the wrong person. But he's quoted more than all the presidents put together, I believe. If you'll get the book put out by Forbes on famous quotes, a lot of the presidents, you'd have to hunt to find any length of number of quotes from them. And he'll just had so many of them that you see every day, in the material.
Yeah, that's unbelievable. How do you think Napoleon would want people to engage with his book today? 2014. Do you think he'd want it to be a book that they read from front to back? Or a book that they kind of used as a resource, that they jumped in and pulled information out as needed?
Well, he starts off in the book telling, the starting point of all achievement, where it was. I think he would want people to read it. But the big thing is that Wade, and what we probably notice a lot is, I like novels. I like historical novels. I can name you a bunch of them. I read a lot of the material that I enjoy very much. But I read them one time and I know what the story is. I don't have to go back and do it. Hill's book is a type of book that you read and you plan and work as you go through it and say, yeah, I could do this or this will apply to me. And in essence, you write your ending of the book. The novel we have to read, we may enjoy it. We'll find out the boy got the girl, the uncle died and left him $1 million or what. But in a book that we call a self-help book, like Think and Grow Rich, we're able to write the story of our life by taking that information. And the secret of it, if it is one, it's once we have a purpose, is the application of it. Mr. Stone used to tell us over and over again, when somebody would say something other, and he'd say, just do it. See, most people go over and over and over. And I know I got an email regarding a guy, why wasn't there a statue put up to Napoleon Hill? He'd been thinking about it for 15 years. And I basically told him, go back and read the book. I told him what I'd done. I put a historical marker up. I got the course set, taught at the University of Virginia. I taught it 12 years, and it's been taught for 20-some, and went over and over and over things that we had done to recognize and promote Napoleon Hill. But I said, if the material's going to do anything to you, and you have an idea, you have to do something with the idea. It's not worth anything until it's put in place.
Yeah, it's huge. And when you say Stone, are you talking about William Clement Stone?
Yes. He was
And what was the relationship, or when did he come into play with Napoleon Hill?
He actually read the book when it came out, and he had furnished it to his people, and but he never met Napoleon until 1952, and Hill was in semi-retirement. He was 69 years old, living in California, and he had got invited to speak at a dental convention in Chicago. The year would have been 1952, and when it was mentioned that Napoleon Hill was going to be the speaker, and Stoner never met him. So he attended the convention and met him. And of course, he had read the material. He gave it to his people. And he had said over and over again that his business grew 100-fold right off the bat, right off. And the principle was so aligned to what he was doing. So he was really sold on it. So that's when he challenged Napoleon to come out of retirement and to hold seminars and to push his book publications and so forth. So Hill told him, Mr. Stone, I'll do that if you'll be my manager. And so he actually handled his business for 10 years, from 52 to 62. For 10 years, he worked with Napoleon Hill, and they actually wrote one book together, Success Through a Positive Mental Attitude, which was published in 1960. It was a bestseller right off the bat. It's with Simon & Schuster, and now it's been with them, I guess it's the 54th year, and they're still paying royalties on the book. It's done pretty good.
Wow. Now, you and I were speaking, I guess, offline about some of the different, how many it sold in the first week and month and all that kind of stuff. Can we recover that? So it came, Think and Grow Rich came out March 1937. Can you give us some of the stats?
Yeah, they printed 5,000 books, and within 6 weeks, they was all gone. And then, so in May, they printed 10,000 copies, and they were selling out. In August, they printed 20,000. And what they discovered was a lot of people, especially in the insurance and some other business, they weren't buying one copy. They were buying hundreds of copies to give their employees. And of course, now this was before the internet and before the all the other social media is out there to do the advertising and promoting it and so forth. I remember the story of. Even in the early 50s, Earl Nightingale told about he was selling ads, and he challenged a guy at a bookstore to sell them on a commission, and he said, "Oh, we couldn't do that," and pay for the ads, and so he placed them in there, and then later the guy changed his mind. It was selling so good that he was willing to do them on a commission. So. His biggest means of promoting his books became just speaking. He spoke all over the country. One year I got information on his little booklets. He spoke about 70-some different places all over the country. He would go absolutely anywhere to speak, and he did that even before he wrote Think and Grow Rich, for Law of Success. When he was speaking, and of course he had the magazines from 1919 to 1923. He published magazines, so he was a self-promoter. He'd go anywhere and speak for $100 or what. And the fact is, one of those speeches was the inspiration for Think and Grow Rich. The year was 1922. He was invited to speak at Salem University up in West Virginia, and he spoke about this material. And one of the people in the audience was a guy graduating. His name was Jennings Randolph. Of course, he was later U.S. Senator, later served on our board, and so forth, and was a great promoter of Hill through his life. But he wrote Napoleon a letter and said that I heard you talk, and he said, you so inspired me, I decided to devote my life to public service. And he said, if you ever get that material put in a book, I would like to have the first copy. So he was recognized. He recognized them with printing that letter in the original book that that Jennings Randolph wrote to him. So they stayed in touch right up to his death. And the fact is that speech has never been published, and I'm going to publish it in a book coming out the first of the year. That 1922 speech that he gave.
Oh wow! Do they have an audio version of that speech as well, or will it just be the?
Oh, it's the microfilm for where it was carried. It's just a written bit. We don't have an audio. Earliest audios we got is 1947 when Hill, that's of any substances. He had a program for Warner Brothers in Hollywood, California, on a Sunday afternoon, and we have those audios. And it was a radio talk show. And of course, by that time, he's promoting his books. And he wrote a book in 1945, which I think was originally called Master Key to Riches. And in that book, and I believe it's one of the first, he started putting at the end of the book, he would put in it that if you write the author, he will send you an autographed book plate along with an essay. Please enclose a stamped, self-addressed envelope. And what he was doing was marketing, because the next time he had a book out, he had his automatic list of people who read his material. And plus they furnish the envelope and put the stamp on it. So all he was out was a little bit of effort. And so we still get letters from people in foreign countries and so forth that have some of those old books or get those books and will want his autograph, which we don't have them. We had them duplicated on a book note card, but of course his autograph, a real autograph, is worth a lot of money today.
Wow, yeah, that's incredible. All right, Don, so now we're to my favorite part of the interview, and that's where we're basically just going to go through the book. And I guess we'll pretend I can't believe that there's people who haven't read it already, but we're basically trying to give an excellent summary of the book to someone who's never read it before. And so whether that's chapter by chapter, we don't have to do it that way, but really we're just trying to give someone a great basis of what the book is all about.
Okay, well, the first thing of the book is the first three words. You'll notice is thoughts are things, and simply meaning that everything begins in our thought process. It's a thought before it's a thing, and of course you can have the thoughts and it never materialize because we don't do anything about it. But then he wrote the second chapter on desire. And under desire was, it's basically what do you want out of life? And he tells us that the starting point of all achievement is definitely a purpose. And I think that's lacking in most people. They're wandering from day to day. And I think you have to find something other that you enjoy doing, that you definitely a purpose. It can be different from everyone. And it's not what our parents want for us. It's basically what we want. I don't care if it's saving stray dogs or becoming a medical doctor. We have to have he called it a burning desire. In other words, finding our purpose, what we want, what we have a passion about. Even a good book, the Bible tells us, man must find his purpose. And most people don't have one. They go to work, they get paid, they spend the money, and they go to work. And most people, the surveys show, don't like what they're doing. It's because they've never found their desire, what they really like to do. As that saying is, most of them are making a living, they're not making a life. And there's a whole lot of difference. But that's the second chapter. And of course, the third one's on faith. And to me, it's very, very, very interesting because he talks about visualization. And, a lot of this material, though it won't be directly, would come back from the Bible. Because visualization, you hear people say, yeah, I believe it when I see it. They got it just backwards. You got to see it first with your inner eyes. My friend Jim Stovall's written all the books for us, and he's a great follower of Napoleon Hill. I mean, a tremendous follower. Written 25 books or so. He says, and he is blind, but he says you don't have to be blind to see. meaning what we see with our vision is much more important than what we see with our eyes. And it's extremely important. And there's not a lot been written about visualization. You can check. There's an Indian can't pronounce the name, wrote a book called Creative Visualization, which is important. But being able to see things as you want them and rather than as they are is extremely important, because our visualization, what we're able to see, is like a roadmap. It gives us directions of where we want to go. And then, of course, you got to make plans and you got to put them into action and you got to have persistence. But that part on faith is extremely, extremely important. Then he goes to auto-suggestion. I read a book that I used when I was teaching a course in college this guy was a psychologist. He wrote a book called What Do You Say When You Talk to Yourself? The whole essence of the book is what he was talking about, all the suggestion is. You may come to work one day, Wade, and one of the guys say, Wade, your suit don't look good. But you can look and it's tailored and where it's got a little jealousy or whatever. But if Wade says to himself is, Wade, you're not dressed proper, then we believe our self-talk. What someone else says to us that you'll never make it, that can be actually a motivator. So you'll never get that program you're desiring. You just don't have the background, you don't have the connections, you don't have the money, what kind of excuse you want to make up. But when Wade says to himself is, I'll never make it, then we're doomed because we believe our self-talk. So what we say to ourselves is extremely important. It's very important because it stirs our subconscious mind and keeps us going in the right way. We don't want to tell people that we're broke or we don't have no money. We don't want to use this negative stuff to us because it's real easy for it to come a part of us. I saw a cartoon once and the guy said, I never had no money, but then I didn't expect to have much. So, self-fulfilling prophecy, when you start talking to yourself that way. The next chapter of Wade is on specialized knowledge. Now, this one's extremely important. I've been on the trustees of University of Virginia for, I don't know, probably 15 years. I'm one of the long-timers that they want to keep me on there for some reason. And I'm also president of the foundation board, which is a fundraising arm of the college. And I've served in that about 15 years, I think, also. But I guess it's my banking background. But anyway, we talk about, we're a liberal arts college, and it's extremely important, a liberal arts college is. But general knowledge don't get you a lot of places unless you get on a quiz show. If you get on Jeopardy and they ask questions on geography, politics, and all these other things, science and what have you. But to really, really do good, you got to stand out in some area. It can be in a particular thing in sports. Not too many people play 3 or 4 sports and make a good living. In the end, they have to concentrate on something or another. And it's, jack of all trades, master of none. But specialized knowledge is what big money is paid for. It's what brings recognition. And I think he done a good coverage on that, because if we have specialized knowledge in a certain area, we can get the information we know because it's an information world today. But we have to stand out in a particular field, whether it be a tech field or science or legal or whatever it is, to get recognized and get the best recognitions. We have to specialize in something or another, and that's why I think he covered the importance of it. The next chapter he wrote was on imagination. He called it the workshop of the mind. Now, this is something in the line maybe you think of creative visualization. The imagination. He tells us how to use it and what can become of it. I know he told a story, and I remember right. He told a story of the kettle, and which was turned out to be Coca-Cola, and how some little thing like that could catch on. But if that guy had done the Coca-Cola and he had only served people in his drugstore and never tried to market it or get with nobody else, it would have been a nice idea what he had. But, He simply took that idea of what he did and promoted it. And I'm told it's the most popular word in the world is Coca-Cola. And so that's what he's talking about, that someone said it's only impossible until somebody does it. And I think that's what our imagination can do to us, where it's Wright brothers or with a plane, or Edison with a phonograph. Most of the things come from people who have a vivid imagination, and it's a very good chapter. From there, he goes on to organized planning, and he says that's putting your desire into action, and that's important. He didn't use a verse, but I've used it. There's a verse the Bible said, if you're going to build a building, first thing, you must sit down and devise a plan. Now, lots of people would like to be a medical doctor, or they'd like to be a bank president, or like to be a what. But there's more than just wanting it. There's more than just desires. You got to say, well, if I am going to be a medical doctor, you can do some studies. First off, I need to finish high school. Next off, I need to get a liberal arts degree. I need to specialize in chemistry, biology, and these sciences. And then I got to take this other stuff, one step at a time. But you got to plan, and then you got to execute the plan. And the organized planning is very, very, very important. Now, it doesn't mean the plans go exactly like you want them. I mean, like you plan to go to college and you get interruptions, you don't have the money. Well, because you can't finish on the time that you're allowed in 4 years. So what if it took you 8 years? I think it took me, I don't know, I went 4 nights a week, 2 years, and then went 4 nights a week. So it takes you longer than 4 years to get the degree you wanted. That doesn't mean that you fail. It took longer than what you anticipated. But the organized planning of how you're going to do it, whether or not I remember I took 120 hours, and I simply listed all the courses they will get to get a major in accounting and a major and a double major in finance. And I simply wrote all those courses down, whether it be 6 hours of English and so much of this and so much of that. And as I enrolled in them, I didn't even wait till I got my grade. When I was enrolled in that class, I drew a line to it. And first thing you know, I'm getting down there, and I've got 4 subjects left, and they're 3 hours each. And I was going to night school. One of the courses I was taught the same thing as another one, and I picked up the phone, called the home office. I was managing the finance office, and I told them I got problems. I want to graduate in June, but I said I've got one of the classes is taught the same time. Another one I would like to get off on Tuesdays and Thursdays, a couple hours to take this class, and they said go ahead. But and when I enrolled in, I crossed them out, and that's what it means by organized planning. Not just organize and say, this is what I'm going to do, and then you go ahead and do it. And if you don't do it on time, that doesn't mean that you didn't make it. It could take a little bit longer due to circumstances that you couldn't control. But it's very, very important, especially if you're on something that's as important as your career. I mean, you can't just wake up one day and want to be a doctor or anything else much important. It takes a lot of thinking, and it takes a lot of planning, and it takes action to put it into place. The 14th chapter he called the Sixth Sense, and from here I think is the biggest thing that brought this about was he was with Edison and people like Gates that had all kinds of patents. And both of them would basically tell the same thing. Gates actually did a lot of inventions and so forth. He said that he would go into a room with a desk, pencil, and paper, and he would just think. In other words, he would just think in ideas. And Edison said when he was working on something else, he couldn't figure it out, couldn't get the answer. He said sometimes it just seemed to come to him out of the air. In other words, he was allowed to have his mind in such a state that it was receptive of things. And that's happened to all of us, I'm sure, that we think of something or another, and even like I can recall somebody's name, that it doesn't come to us. But then a little later it pops up and says, and people say, why didn't I think of that? Well, we just don't. But I think the thing that's important that that we recognize that thing is that we don't have to have all the answers because nobody has them. But it's possible to get them from other sources with I would call it having an open mind. And of course, the 15th chapter of the book is the 6 ghosts of fear, and this one is probably follows along a lot of the Outwitting the Devil. Fact is, we advertised Outwitting the Devil. I put a quote on there that fear was a man-made devil. He did not use that in the book devil book itself, but he used it in other places, and I thought it very appropriate when advertising it that fear was a man-made devil. And he said the biggest of all of them was a fear of poverty, that people have a fear of poverty, and of course, what do they end up with? Because that's what they think about. They don't see themselves in another position. I used to work on a book on finance behavior, and I used a quote from Eisner. He said was, if all you want to do in survive is survive, he said that means you've got food, clothing, and shelter. He said you can get that in a prison. You get all three of you survive. You've got a roof over your head, they feed you and they clothe you. But he said life should be more than that. And I think that those fears can do two things. We could be afraid of something or other, and it could mobilize us to do something or other about it, or it could actually freeze us and stop us from doing anything. You could. And I remember one of the stories at Hill talked about this rich family had a little boy, and they protected him so that they had a garden gate, and he was basically locked in. And one day, the maid or somebody left the gate open, and the little boy goes out and he gets run over and gets killed because he never faced their fears. And like I said, our fears are man-made, but they stop so many people. And they'll say things like they're thinking somebody's looking behind them. Somebody their spouse says, "Well, you should never try that." And then somebody else will say something other. Why you think you can do that? You don't know nobody, and so forth and so on. And after a while, you tell yourself, "I guess they're right," rather than discarding what they said was and doing what need to be done to accomplish what their goals are. But it's an important subject. But a lot of people's lives are controlled by fear. A fear of, and everybody can develop different ones: fear of flying, or fear of high places, or fear. But that fear of not getting approval from your spouse or your children or your everyone can basically cause you to lead a life of mediocrity. And it doesn't have to be that way, because broke down the word FEAR, false evidence of pure and real, and just an important subject that would keep us from doing anything. If you sat here and said, "Nah, I don't think that somebody want to publish that," you could be surprised sometimes. Sometimes the things that other people making a decision are more interested in than what you might have thought they would be. But I have a trustee who's a Hispanic born with cerebral palsy. He owns 5 McDonald's, and his favorite saying was, and he served on as trustee as long as I was trustee, and he's still on our board. And his favorite saying was, "You'll never know if you don't let me try." And what he's in reference to, he's born with cerebral palsy. He still limps. He's got a bad arm, and he applied for a job at the airport, and they told him he couldn't do it. And they said, "Give me," he said, and that's what he'd say to him. And they let him. He went out for ROTC, and they told him that he couldn't hold a gun enough. And he was determined to, and he did. And then later, same way at McDonald's. And so he started working at McDonald's. I think he was 15 or 16 or something, real young. And he bugged the devil out of him until he was a young manager of the store. Now he owns about 5 or 6 stores in the Chicago area. He owns the ones at the airport. He owns the duty stores at the airport, and so forth and so on. But that was his favorite thing was, don't know unless you let me try. So he's willing to try, But with cerebral palsy and him not being able to get around as good as other kids, it'd been real easy for him to be content. Or take Jim Stovall, blind since the age of 29. He's got every right in the world to be drawing disability. And instead, that guy, I don't think he cared me tell you, he's worth millions and millions of dollars. And recognized one of the 10 outstanding men in America in the same year that Mother Teresa was recognized. He's a terrific individual, and he's blind. So we can all have disabilities, but if we let them stop us, we'll never reach our potential. So that's pretty well a highlight of the chapters in the book.
Don, thank you for taking us through that. That was great. I appreciate you interjecting the stories along the way as well. And this next question, I think, would be the most difficult. And I know you can actually find this type of question actually on the internet, because people always wanted to know, what was the one thing, that Napoleon Hill wanted us to get out of this book. And that's basically the next question. If the reader could only take one concept, principle, or action item out of the entire book, what do you think Napoleon Hill would have wanted that to be?
That we learn to think. And that's what the whole thing is about. And that's the point of an education. So many people, I think, understand that education is memorizing a bunch of material, giving it to the professor, getting so many hours credit, get enough credit, they give you a piece of paper that you got a degree. But if you went to school long enough to just think, learn how to think, then you can get the information that you're seeking. It's an information society. And I think that's what you wanted us to do, was to think. And I think if there is anything about it, it's worthwhile. It's to learn how to think in any situation that comes up. Use our imagination, make plans, and persist, which is sadly lacking, because a lot of people don't have that burning desire to succeed. So they try something other, and then they tell us that, well, everybody said it wouldn't work. I guess they're right. And so I think that's it, that we use our thought process, our thinking process, our imagination, and develop plans. And of course, our motto is making the world a better place in which to live. But he meant that for us each individually too. It's success is not just for the other person. Of course, he didn't try to define success, and it's not their place. Now, it's true that when he wrote Think and Grow Rich, it was about money. I mean, I've heard people say, well, it's not. Well, they need to go back and read it, because he tells us in Think and Grow Rich that he wrote the book for millions of men and women who were living in poverty and in fear of poverty. So it was about how we could improve our material life. But somewhere along the line of the way, that we should learn also that we can make a difference in other people's life. And that's the reason our motto is what it is, making the world a better place in which to live. And that should be the legacy of all of us, that we've made when we've left, that we've made the world a place to live in some fashion.
Excellent. Don, do you have, and this can be a personal one, do you have a favorite quote from the book?
Well, yeah, the one that's so popular was, I love that of his, whatever mind a man can believe and conceive it can achieve. But they so many of them are just the three words: thoughts or things. I'll do a book with Greg Reed, come out, I guess, the first year, and I picked a title. They asked me all these different things about was it, and I said, well, thoughts or things is three words, and that's what we're talking about. And the editor at Penguin got back in touch with me and said they ran through the salespeople and said overwhelmingly that was the choice for the title, that thoughts or things. And so this them three words is, to me, is tremendous.
Excellent. And if there's another book that you could recommend for those of us that are huge Think and Grow Rich fans, and I am, because of the way it created some paradigm shifts in the way I thought, what's another book that you think the listeners would love to read if they're really a fan of the content and the context in which Think and Grow Rich goes through? What's another book you think that would help out?
The last one he wrote before he died was Grow Rich with Peace of Mind. let's see, he would have been, I believe, 84 years old when he wrote that one. He lived to be 87. He actually published You Work Your Own Miracles a year after he died. But the last one he wrote, published before he died, was Grow Rich with Peace of Mind. And I like it very much because he had matured. And in this one, he shows us it's more than just money. Of course, if you don't have no money, it's like oxygen. It's the most important thing there is. But once you have money, he says, grow rich with peace of mind, that we stop and think what else we can do, how we can use the money rather than just for material and for our own self-good, how we can make a difference in it. So, but this is a mature heel. He's much more mature when he wrote Grow Rich with Peace of Mind. It's sold well, of course, nothing like Think and Grow Rich, but it's got very good material in it, and I like it very much.
Excellent. Well, very good. Well, Don, thank you for coming on. And before we depart, can you recommend the best way for our listeners to get more information on Napoleon Hill, Think and Grow Rich, and his other books?
Yeah, our website is www.naphill, that's NAPHILL.org. That's our homepage, and I think we got all the books and courses and so forth, and on the website, including my book or other books that's some way related to Napoleon Hill, or the type of work we do. Like I just published one of Jim Stovall's books, Jim Stovall's Wisdom for Winners, just came out last month, and seemed to have an awful lot of interest. And of course, I did a book with McGraw-Hill last year called, and they titled it, I had a different title. They changed the title to Everything I Know About Success I Learned from Napoleon Hill. And it's just basically personal stories, application of material when I was growing up and so forth.
Excellent. Well, Don, thanks again for coming on. This was a dream come true for me. I've said it several times to you, but this is one of my most favorite books that I've ever read, and it created a huge change in my life. And so this is a dream come true to be able to talk about it with someone from the foundation. So thanks again for coming on.
Oh, thank you, Wade. It's unbelievable the people that we know of that have been greatly influenced by the book.
Thanks again for listening in today. And if there's a book you would love to hear reviewed by the author, please visit us on iTunes and leave us a review with that book title. If you would like to get your hands on Think and Grow Rich or any of the other resources mentioned by Don, just look at the show notes at the elpodcast.com.
Looking for your next book idea? Head over to the elpodcast.com, where Wade shares his amazing resource, the top 10 business books recommended by over 500 entrepreneurs, with you for free. That's the elpodcast.com. Till the next time, keep it on the EL.